I talked a good friend of mine into reading Marie Kondo's book, which is the life-changing magic of tidying. Getting rid of things, clutter, get rid of clutter in your house. So I talked her into reading it, and she really got into it. I went over to her house. She had 7 large boxes of books. And she said, "Oh, Patty, you have to go through these and take whatever books that are interesting to you and read them." And I said, "I have read Marie Kondo's book, too." I am actually getting rid of my stuff. I don't want your stuff in my house. And she said, "Oh, no, there are great stories here, great books. How about this one? How about this one? How about this one?" Then she came upon this one. God has 99 names. And she said, "Really, Patty, this has your name all over it. Do a sermon about this." Well, have you ever been in a position where somebody is insisting that you take something with you? It could be leftovers, it could be an umbrella, it could be a sweater, it could be a book. And you get this idea that they are not letting you out of their house until you take it. It was like that. And so I took it. I took the book knowing I am really not interested in reading this large book about, I read the one sentence on the back. This is what it's about. God has 99 names is a gripping, authoritative account of the epic battle between modernity and militant Islam that is reshaping the Middle East. I thought, that's enough for me. Yeah. I am actually not interested in reading about that, the difference between modernity and militant Islam right now. So if you are, you can see me afterwards, and this can go home to your house with you. But the bottom line is, I didn't read the book, just a secret between you and me. But I did think about the title. God has 99 names. And I thought, well, what does that mean? How does that weave into this big book about the Middle East? So I looked it up. And it turns out that in the Muslim faith, in the Quran, they label God with 99 different ways. They express who God is 99 different ways. I looked them up and I read them. And as I read the 99 names, it was rather a spiritual experience for me. It was very mind-altering. And so I would like to read them to you as well. And it may not touch you at all, I'm not sure, but I ask you to close your eyes and cup your hands open. And get quiet. Cup those hands, close your eyes, because I can see if your eyes are open. Cup your hands, and I want you to imagine what your image of God is. And if you don't believe in God, that's okay. I want you to imagine yourself being surrounded by golden light, swirling around you, the light embracing you. And as you are sitting there getting centered, getting connected to God or the light, imagine each of these 99 names about God or the light to be absolutely true. And just breathe into the words. The first word is Allah, the merciful, the beneficent, the gracious, the most compassionate, the King, the most holy, the just, the bestower of peace, the granter of security, the protector, the mighty, the compeller, supreme in greatness, the majestic, the creator, the gatherer, the bestower of form, the bestower of honor, the forgiver, the subduer, the everlasting, the provider, the opener, the judge, the all-knowing, the contractor and the expander, the light, the exalter, the enricher, the patient one, the all-hearing, the all-seeing, the all-sufficient, the equitable, the gentle, the knower of subtleties, the all-aware, the forbearing, the incomparably great, the forgiving, the appreciative, the preventer of harm, the most great, the preserver, the sustainer, the reckoner, the majestic one, the revered, the sublime, the generous, the watchful, the responsive, the all-encompassing, the all-embracing, the wise, the loving one, the most glorious, the resurrector, the witness, the truth, the ultimate trustee, the disposer of affairs, the most strong, the firm one, the authoritative, the guide, the all-praised, the praiseworthy, the benign, the originator, the restorer to life, the giver of life, the causer of death, the ever-living, the self-existing by whom all subsist, the self-sufficient, the all-perceiving, the glorified, the one, the owner of the kingdom, the omnipotent, the able, the powerful, the expediter, the expediter, the delayer, the first, the last, the manifest, the hidden, the governor, the enricher, the most exalted, the ultimate, the source of all goodness, the granter and acceptor of repentance, the pardoner, and finally, the most kind. Breathe into that, the most kind surrounding you. Blessed be and amen. Come back into the room. And I wonder how you're feeling now. I wonder if it shifted you at all. It's a little mood altering to think of all of that in one space at one time. For me, when I read the list the first time, I felt a sense of peace, and I felt a sense of interconnectedness. Because one of our principles as Unitarian Universalists is that we are part of all that is. We are part and interconnected with each other. Each of us is part of the interconnected web of life. And when I read that list the first time, that's what I got. I felt interconnected to all those wonderful words. But is that God? Well, it turns out that there's a belief in the Muslim faith that says, if anyone tries to describe to you who God is, or what God is, or who Allah is, they use the word Allah the most, that they are really just telling you more about themselves than about Allah. Because they believe there is no actual way to accurately and completely describe Allah or God. Not even with the 99 names. I remember a few years ago I went to an interfaith conference, and there was an imam speaking there, and I really wanted to hear him because he was speaking and describing the Muslim faith, which I didn't know a lot about at the time. And he said there are 3 ways for us to know Allah or God. The first way is to study the Quran, just like Christians study the Bible. The second way is to go in community with each other, which we do here. To pray 5 times a day and to go to services at the mosque. And the third way to know God is in nature. He said, if you live in a remote village in the middle of the rainforest, and you've never even heard of the Quran, and you've never even heard of Allah, you would still know Allah. Because Allah, or God, is in everything. And there's no escaping the kind of spiritual experience of the awe of this planet. Albert Einstein said we should walk around in awe all the time. Because the reality is, this planet and how it works is astounding. When he was asked, do you believe in God? Albert Einstein said, yes, there must have been a creator because it's too perfect the way it is. I don't know. What about you? What is your image of God? I was in Pittsburgh this week when my younger son called me. And he said, Mom, I have to just tell you this. I just had the most amazing experience. It's Starbucks. And I'm like, okay. He said, well, these two guys came in. They were older, and they hadn't seen each other for a long time. They had not planned to meet. They just ran into each other. And they were warmly saying hello, and they got their coffees, and they were standing there waiting for their coffees, the same as I was waiting for my coffee. And then they got into this deep philosophical discussion about describing God. Finally, one of them said, you know, if you talk about God up there, you're putting a limit on God. And if you talk about God as he or him, you're putting a limit on God. And my son thought this was quite amazing, that he was at that point in time standing with these people practically in their conversation about my topic today. And he began to wonder, why do we put a limit on God? And I said to him, honey, that moment, that was God. That was amazing that you were there to hear that message, that intersection of people right then. That was a divine thing. Of course, it was a coincidence. But are coincidences divine? I think they are. That we run into people, that we have an intersection with somebody that has the message that we need right then. I label it all God. So, for myself though, I don't really know if there was a creator, one God. I can tell you what I believe, but I don't know. I don't know about you. So for me, it's easier to not put a limit on God and just make God in everything. When I was younger, I attended adult children of alcoholics meetings because my biological dad was an alcoholic. And I really recommend the 12-step meetings for anybody that was raised in alcoholism or is struggling with addiction. They're a wonderful, wonderful program. But I went to one meeting at the adult children, and it was on a Sunday morning, and it was called a higher power meeting. And people were invited to come up to the microphone one at a time and explain what their higher power was. A lot of people said God. God's my higher power. A lot of people said Jesus. Jesus is my higher power. A couple people said Allah. Some people said nature. I remember one person said the ocean. That is my higher power. I sit by the ocean and I experience the rhythm of the ocean. Some people said, this group right here is my higher power. This community that supports me and loves me is my higher power. Some people said love. Some people said the innocence of children. And one person said, it's the part of my brain that I don't have conscious awareness of. That's the one I decided to go with. That there is another consciousness that I am not connected to. Maybe it's inside of me, maybe it's outside of me, maybe it's both. What happens if we don't put a limit on God? Most of you know that I'm a psychotherapist, And I've been in practice for 30 years. Now, in those 30 years, I've worked with several people who label themselves as atheists. Astronauts, scientists, accountants. And certainly there are here people that label themselves, consider themselves atheists. Don't believe in God. So here's my confession. I don't believe that's true. I don't believe there's any such thing as atheist. I think you just label it differently. You have another name for what I would call God. Maybe you call it hope. Maybe you call it compassion. Maybe you call it kindness. Maybe you call it love. Maybe you call it science, quantum physics, or coincidence. Maybe you call it your inner voice. Maybe you call it sacred. Wow, that's really sacred. I would label that God, of course. Maybe you call it connectedness. I label all of that God. Connectedness. Your feelings, your gut, your knowing at another level, sort of transcendent things that happen to us. I see God everywhere. I see God in every single person that's here. I see your light. I see the light that's inside of you. And I label that God. The preciousness that you are. And I label that God. In Nepal, instead of saying hello, they say namaste. They cross their arms and fold their hands and say namaste. And that means that the God in me says hello to the God in you. The sacred in me can see the sacred in you. The light in me connects with the light in you. It's all God. Why put limits on God? I have had people tell me that they have survived accidents that they should not have survived. I've had 2 people tell me they were kidnapped as children and they thought they were going to die. I've had several people tell me they were held up at gunpoint. They were shot. I've had people tell me of their miraculous healing from diseases that they should not have gotten better from. And each one of them said they had a dark, dark moment when they thought they are not going to make it. And each one of them in that dark, dark moment silently cried out, "Help! Help me!" If you were drowning, would you cry out, "Help!" I mean, even in their darkest hour, their deepest despair, there was something that believed in something, some unknown name, unknown energy, some power that they believed could maybe still help them. Is that God? I think it is. And it doesn't matter to me what the name is. Everyone on the planet seems to have transcendent experiences in their lifetime. You might have that transcendent feeling when you hold a brand new baby. Somebody hands you a brand new baby and it's like, wow, woo. Or you might have that experience if you sit with somebody and they pass on to the next adventure, whatever that is. They die as you're holding their hand. And you feel something bigger than life, something you haven't experienced very much in life. I call that God. You might have that transcendent experience if you listen to an amazing concert or amazing piece of music, or if you see an amazing piece of artwork. I was lucky enough to get to go to the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam and to see Rembrandt's Night Watch. It's about almost as big as these windows behind me, not quite that big, but big. And the lighting is so amazing. It looks like real people are standing there. But it's a 2-dimensional painting on canvas. And when I saw it, I was transfixed. I was amazed at the beauty and had a transcendent experience. I label it as God because God is a convenient word to describe something that's so inspiring and motivational, something transcendent. I feel the same way, a connection with the bigger than me, the power that's bigger than me, whenever I watch a miracle unfold in front of me. I don't know if you see those miracles, but they're out there. Like, for example, last Saturday night, I experienced a miracle. I was on my way to Dallas, and I was running a little bit late, just a little bit. I parked in the satellite parking. I got on the shuttle. I got to the airport, and I looked at the board, and I was confused because the flight of American Airlines to Dallas, Texas, was listed at 6:11, and my boarding pass said 6:04. And so I went up to the desk, and I said, "Is the 6:04 flight the same as the 6:11 flight? Why would they have two flights to Dallas?" And she looked at my, boarding pass, and she said, "Oh, you're at the wrong airport." I was at Bush Intercontinental, and my plane was at Hobby Airport, 40 minutes away. So I said to her, "Well, I have an American airline ticket. Do you have any seats on that 6:11 flight?" "Oh, yes, we have many open seats." I said, "Oh, great. Can I use this ticket to get on that plane?" And she said, "No. You're at the wrong airport." And I said, "Well, I know, but I have an American Airlines ticket going to Dallas. You have seats on an American Airlines plane going to Dallas." I said, "Can I go standby?" And she said, "No." And I said, "Do you ever have mercy on people like me? Does this happen?" And she says, "Yes, it happens about 5 or 6 times a day." I said, "Would you ever have mercy and just somehow put me on that plane?" And she said, "Well, you could pay the change fee, and you could pay the extra amount actually buying the ticket today. Let's see, you could go to Dallas, you could get on the plane. It's an additional $590. And I already had a ticket. And I thought to myself, it was 4:59, and I'm in the wrong airport, and my plane leaves at 6:04, and I thought, I am wasting my time with this lady. And I said, "Well, I don't think I'm going to do that today. Thank you." And I ran downstairs, and I hailed a cab, and I said to the cabbie, "Can you get me on this flight to Hobby Airport that leaves at 6:04, and it's already 5:04? And he said, "Absolutely." He drove like a banshee, in and out, in and out, in and out of traffic. Got me there. Ran, went through the security, ran, got to my gate, and got on the plane. A miracle. The bigger miracle was I sat in the window, nobody sat in the middle seat, and an older woman sat in the aisle. And she came and she had a bunch of flowers in her hand that she was carrying upside down, presumably to dry them out. And the flight attendant came and stopped in the hustle and bustle and said to this woman, "Oh, are those flowers from a special occasion?" And the woman said, she choked up and she said, I just lost my sister. This is from her funeral. And the flight attendant squatted down and she said, "I lost my sister too." And they both nodded. And it was a magical moment. I was like, wow, sacred. The short flight to Dallas, that flight attendant took care of this woman. She brought her water. She brought her tissues. At one point she walked by and she just squeezed her hand. And I thought, I am so lucky to be on this plane and not that 6:11 going to Dallas. Because right there, I got to see the face of God. And I was filled with peace And I was filled with hope. And I said, that is the hope for the world, whoever that flight attendant was. You see, we can see the face of God if we look for it. We can see it in the love and the generosity and the kindness that is extended to other people. I want to close with a story for you from Chicken Soup for the Soul. It is written by Terry Dobson, and it's called Another Way. The train clanked and rattled through the suburbs of Tokyo on a drowsy spring afternoon. Our car was comparatively empty, a few housewives with their kids in tow, some old folks going shopping. I gazed absently out the window. At one station, the doors opened, and suddenly the quiet afternoon was shattered by a man bellowing violent, incomprehensible curses. The man staggered into our car. He wore laborer's clothing and was big, drunk, and dirty. Screaming, he swung at a lady who held a baby. The blow sent her spinning into the lap of an elderly couple. It was a miracle that the baby was unharmed. Terrified, the couple jumped up and scrambled toward the other end of the car. The laborer aimed a kick at the retreating back of the old woman, but missed her as she scuttled to safety. This so enraged the drunk that he grabbed the metal pole in the center of the car and tried to wrench it out. I could see that one of his hands was cut and bleeding. The train lurched ahead, and the passengers frozen with fear. I stood up. I was young then, some 20 years ago, and I was in pretty good shape. I'd been putting in a solid 8 hours of Aikido training nearly every day for the past 3 years. I would say that was pretty good shape. I liked to throw and grapple. I thought I was tough. The trouble was my martial skill was untested in actual battle. As students of Aikido, we were not allowed to fight. Aikido, my teacher had said again and again, is the art of reconciliation. Whoever has the mind to fight has broken his connection with the universe. If you try to dominate people, you're already defeated. We study how to resolve conflict, not how to start it. I listened to his words. I tried hard. I even went as far as to cross the street to avoid the chimpera, the pinball punks who lounged around at the train station. I felt both tough and holy then. In my heart, however, I wanted an absolutely legitimate opportunity whereby I may save the innocent by destroying the guilty. This is it, I said to myself. This is my moment. I got to my feet. People are in danger here. If I don't do something fast, somebody will probably get hurt. Seeing me stand up, the drunk recognized a chance to focus his rage. "Aha!" he roared. "A foreigner! You need a lesson in Japanese manners." I held on lightly to the commuter strap ahead, and I gave him a slow look of disgust and dismissal. I planned to take that turkey apart limb by limb, but he had to make the first move. I wanted him mad, so I pursed my lips and I blew him a kiss. "All right," he hollered, "you're going to get a lesson." He gathered himself to rush for me. A fraction of a second before he could move, someone shouted, "Hey!" It was ear-splitting. I remember that strangely joyous, lilting quality, as though you and a friend had been searching diligently for each other. He suddenly stumbled upon it. "Hey! "Hey, good friend!" I wheeled to my left. The drunk spun to his right. We both stared down at this little old Japanese man. He must have been well in his 70s. This tiny gentleman, sitting immaculate in his kimono. He took no notice of me, but he beamed delightfully at the laborer, as though he had a most important, most welcome secret to share with him. "Come here," the old man said. "Come on, come down and sit and talk with me." The big man followed as if he was on a string. "Please, sit right here." He planted his feet belligerently in front of the old gentleman and roared above the wheels, "Why the hell should I talk to you?" The drunk now had his back to me. If his elbow moved so much as a millimeter, I was going to drop him to his knees. The old man continued to beam at the laborer, to welcome him. "Hey, what you been drinking?" he asked, his eyes sparkling with interest. "I've been drinking sake," said the laborer, "and it's none of your business." "Oh, that's wonderful," said the old man. "Absolutely wonderful. Because you know what? I love sake too. Every night, me and the wife, she is 76, you know, we sit down and have our little bottle of sake. We take it out into the garden and we sit on the old wooden bench. We watch the sun go down and we look to see how our persimmon tree is doing. My great-grandfather planted that tree, and we worry about whether it will recover from the ice storms from last winter. Our tree has done better than expected." He looked up at the laborer, eyes twinkling. As he struggled to follow the old man, his face began to soften. His fist slowly unclenched. "Yeah," he said, "I love persimmons too." His voice trailed off. "Yes," said the old man, smiling, "I'm sure you have a wonderful wife." The laborer said, "No, my wife died." Very gently swaying with the motion of the train, the big man began to sob. "I don't have a wife. I don't have a home. I don't have a job, and I'm ashamed of myself." Tears rolled down his cheeks. A spasm of despair rippled his body. As I stood there in my well-scrubbed, youthful innocence, my make this world safe for democracy righteousness, I felt dirtier than he was. The train arrived at my stop. As the doors opened, I heard the old man say, My. That has to be a difficult predicament indeed. Sit down here with me and tell me all about it." I turned my head one last look. The laborer was sprawled on the seat with his head in the old man's lap. The old man was stroking his filthy, matted hair. As the train pulled away, I sat down on a bench in the station. What I had wanted to do with muscle, he had accomplished with kind words. I had just seen a Cato in action, the essence of love. I would have to practice the art with an entirely different spirit. It would be a long time before I could speak about the resolution of conflict. You see, there was the face of God again. This time it was an old Japanese man on a train. What happens if we don't put limits on God? And we look for God everywhere. What happens? We will connect with God. We will connect with love, and our heart will be opened. Please let us pray today. Close your eyes. Get quiet. Dear God, love, light, universe, life. thank you for our ability to feel love in our hearts and to give love outward. Please let us have more of that. Please let us see the face of God everywhere we go. And please let us be the face of God everywhere we go as well.